Dawn breaks over a frozen wasteland. Your breath clouds the air like a wheezy dragon trying to file a complaint. The wind doesn't just slap your face. It delivers a full-blown emotional monologue about how you've personally failed winter. You haven't felt your toes in 3 moons. They could be gone. They could be in another valley. You're not emotionally ready to investigate. Your mammoth head cloak reeks of desperation, expired root juice, and the haunting memory of whatever you rolled in last night. You're draped in every fur you've ever owned, plus one that still has a name tag, and that goat is now peeking over a snowbank like it's consulting a lawyer. This is the Ice Age, nature's long, icy middle finger. The rivers are frozen, the trees look like they gave up, even your brain has frostbite, and yet, you live, you shiver, you sniffle, you shuffle forward like a half-defrosted meatloaf wrapped in sadness. But by prehistoric standards, you're thriving, you're alive, and more importantly, you're layered, fiercely, questionably, fashionably layered. The first strategy? Become a human burrito, not the delicious kind, the desperate, moss-stuffed, survival-flavored kind. Cavemen didn't just wear fur, they escalated it into full-blown tactical gear. You wrapped yourself in moss, bark, root husks, and anything that didn't run away or scream when touched. If it was soft, warmish, and only mildly bitey, it became clothing. Some wore fish skins like designer trench coats. Others added owl feathers to their loincloths and called it formal wear. One overly confident individual stuffed his pants with fermented berries and declared, "For warmth and fragrance." He was never invited to the cuddle pile again, or spoken to, or trusted. Fashion wasn't the goal. There were no seasonal lines, no runway looks, just the primal desire to not become an ice sculpture. If you ended up looking like a damp shrub glued to a taxidermy badger, that was fine. Survival didn't care how you looked. It only cared if your butt cheeks stayed attached. You weren't stylish, you were a walking pile of soggy insulation. And in the Ice Age, that was the new black. When temperatures dropped low enough to freeze your soul and your nasal hair, you relied on one sacred tactic above all, the pile. Not just a sleeping arrangement, a survival strategy, a prehistoric cuddle mass. You collapsed into a heap of bodies, hides, and dreams deferred, like laundry that screams in its sleep. It smelled like wet elk, old root stew, and questionable decisions. Someone always snored like a walrus gargling gravel. Someone always drooled directly into your eye socket. No one apologized. But solitude? That meant cold. And cold meant death. Group discomfort, on the other hand, meant lukewarm survival and the occasional face cramp. You organized it like a roast, biggest on the outside, softest in the middle, gassiest on the perimeter. That one cousin who radiated heat like a furnace stayed in high demand, and Jeffrey the squirrel, always nestled in the center like a smug little emperor, wrapped in a stolen ear flap, daring anyone to challenge his place in the totem of warmth. Your diet? Desperation on a stick. You ate whatever didn't run away fast enough or give you hallucinations more than once. Dried meat, root mash, crunchy beetles, snow if it wasn't yellow or suspiciously crunchy. Mystery mushrooms were a gamble, either a snack or a spirit journey. You revered fat like it was sacred. Lard was love. Bear fat was currency. When someone's secret stash of blubber melted during a freak sunblink, the tribe held a memorial. There was chanting, someone played a sad bone flute. Meals weren't for joy, they were for staying alive, staving off madness, and not letting your stomach file a complaint with the universe. Chewing frozen bark? Totally normal. Called it fiber, and hoped your teeth didn't file for early retirement. You roasted anything that didn't scream, hiss, or make direct eye contact. And you fought, clawed, bit, and emotionally manipulated for the fattiest chunk like it was your birthright, and also your therapist. Cold kills stillness. So you moved. Constantly. You slapped your thighs like you were punishing them for existing. You jumped in place like you were being electrocuted by boredom. You danced like a stressed chicken being chased by its own shadow during a midlife crisis. Kids invented games like roll in snow until numb, punch the tree, and the wildly popular but medically inadvisable lick the icicle and scream. That last one was responsible for at least 3 lost tongues and 1 village waybeat ban. Adults didn't call it play, they called it panicked pacing. and loudly insisted it counted as cardio. You weren't exercising, you were vibrating aggressively to avoid becoming a meat popsicle filled with regrets and frozen flatulence. One visionary lunatic invented cave jogging, a proud loop around the cave's interior that burned 2 calories, kicked up 12 clouds of mammoth dandruff, and nearly trampled 4 elders, 1 goat, and a sacred bowl used exclusively for emotional beet stew. It was banned before noon, was spoken of with reverence. Forever. You got creative. Cavemen were Ice Age fashion designers with no rules, zero shame, and an overabundance of desperation. You saw fur bras, moss gloves, bark earmuffs, and one guy who swore his antler boots made him faster than snow. He broke both ankles, twice. Then made a 3rd pair. He is now a cautionary tale, a campfire legend, and a very confused cave drawing labeled "Do Not Re-Reply." You accessorized like your life depended on it, because it kinda did. Beat necklaces, pine cone earrings, rock bracelets with motivational carvings like "Don't die, try not to cry," and "At least you're not naked," engraved in suspiciously shaky handwriting. One loincloth had "This is fine" carved upside down, presumably by someone lying on the ground, and rethinking all their decisions. Style didn't matter, function did. If it kept your ears from falling off mid-sentence, you wore it with pride, even if it looked like sadness held together with twigs, even if it smelled like regret and old stew, especially if it smelled like stew, because in the Ice Age, survival was the look, and soup-scented accessories were all the rage. Sometimes you prayed, not because you were religious, because you were freezing and out of ideas. You danced to imaginary fire gods with names you made up on the spot. You sang to the sky with the desperation of someone who just lost a wrestling match to a glacier and their dignity. You invented weather spirits with names like Florb, Chilitha, and Ser Toastington the Sun Lord, and acted like they were old drinking buddies who might send warmth if you flattered them hard enough. One guy tried to seduce the sun by yelling compliments into a snowbank. "Your rays are so warm, probably. Your light is emotionally intelligent and glowy." It didn't work. The sky stayed gray. But you respected the hustle. And the confidence. Especially since he was wearing nothing but a pinecone belt and hope. Which, scientifically speaking, is enough to justify anything. Sometimes, belief is the blanket. And sometimes, shared delusion is the only thing keeping your ears from giving up and snapping off like tiny frozen crackers. Caveman survival was teamwork. No one made it alone. One person guarded the cave entrance, squinting into the blizzard like a suspicious owl who just heard gossip. Another fluffed the cuddle pile, rotating humans like lumpy, semi-defrosted potatoes to maintain optimal body heat distribution. Someone else was assigned to track group morale through a highly sophisticated system of grunts, side eyes, and suspicious eyebrow twitches. If anyone smiled for too long, obvious frost delirium, immediate soup required. There was always the designated supply overseer, also known as the root counter. Their entire personality revolved around pacing dramatically, counting frozen tubers, and delivering motivational speeches about ration discipline while waving a stick they insisted was sacred. That same person, without fail, would break first. They'd sneak off into the shadows, demolish half the blubber stash, return with fake crumbs on their face and gasp, "Someone's clearly robbed us," with Oscar-worthy betrayal. And then there was Jeffrey the Squirrel. Unofficial mascot, official chaos goblin. He stole food, he tunneled into blankets, he bit anyone who dared twitch mid-snuggle. Once, he made unbroken eye contact while yanking a turnip out of someone's hands with the confident menace of a debt collector. Nobody liked him. Everyone feared him. But he was warm, persistent, and honestly, kind of majestic in his villainy. So he stayed, obviously. Eventually, you cracked. Everyone cracked. The cold didn't just freeze your skin, it slowly gnawed on your last nerve like a determined raccoon with nothing left to lose. One guy proposed to a snowbank, and then got jealous when it snowed on someone else. Another composed a tragic one-man musical titled "Come Back, Son," ending with an interpretive dance and a wedding to a decorative root. Moke tried to sauté his shoe. Zug stood shirtless and screamed at a log for 6 hours, convinced rage alone could ignite it. Neeb, a sweet, confusing Neeb, painted a sprawling mural of what he called warm imagery, but everyone agreed it mostly looked like steaming butts and smug seafood. You talked to your mittens. You wept into your squirrel pillow. You forgot how toes were supposed to feel and made emotional peace with frostbite. But somehow, every time you hit rock bottom, something ridiculous pulled you back. Like watching your leader slip on mammoth dung and cartwheel into a snowdrift. Because even during the coldest nightmare, someone else's clumsy suffering kept the tribe alive. To survive the cold, you gave it meaning. You didn't just endure it, you mythologized it. You told stories. Around the fire, under a pile of damp furs, with noses half frozen and toes long gone to numbness, you turned pure suffering into sagas. The year of the great toe freeze, the night the fire betrayed us, the time Jeffrey stole our dinner and hid it inside a mammoth skull. These weren't just memories, they were legends in the making. You carved your struggle into the cave walls, sometimes with purpose, sometimes just to keep your hands from freezing in place. You turned every blizzard into a plot line, every icicle became a metaphor, every fart beneath the cuddle pile, a subplot. Because pain was easier to carry when it came with characters, a beginning, and hopefully a slightly warmer ending. Romance didn't stop in the cold, it just adapted. It evolved into something frostbitten and weirdly tender. You flirted through shared pelts, brushing arms beneath a crusty mammoth hide like it was a love poem. You whispered sweet nothings like, "Your breath doesn't smell like squirrel today," and actually meant it. You offered someone your last root nub and called it affection, and they swooned accordingly. Couples huddled extra close, giggling under shared moss blankets that smelled vaguely of soup and panic. One particularly passionate duo even carved their initials into a snow bear's frozen turd. That was commitment. That was art. That was love. Ice Age romance wasn't steamy. It was survival with heartbeats. It was snuggles layered with furs and desperation. It was synchronized shivering beneath the stars and trying not to freeze your lips together during a kiss. Cold? Yes. But cute? Absolutely. After enough winters, freezing practically became a holiday. You had rituals, traditions, frostbite-themed celebrations. First frost was marked by beet stew, extra huddling and dramatic sighing that echoed through the caves like emotional smoke signals. Midwinter brought the Festival of Not Dead Yet, where everyone dressed up like it was summer. Grass skirts, flower crowns made of frozen weeds, and screamed defiantly into the wind like it owed them money. Children learned to ice skate entirely by accident, usually while running and regretting it mid-sprint. Elders passed down ancient wisdom like, "Don't lick the shiny rock, trust me," and "If the snow looks too fluffy, it's probably hiding something awful." Those sayings were sacred, mostly because they were learned the hard way. And when spring finally returned, you didn't just celebrate, you danced. Naked, gleeful, covered in mud and beet juice, sobbing openly into the thawing grass while your legs tried to remember how to function without icicles attached. Even the mammoths looked impressed. Or alarmed. Hard to tell through the fur. We live in a world of heating, thermostats, electric blankets, and thermal socks made with the dark magic of modern textile sorcery, and yet, the moment it drops to 10 DC, we act like the Ice Age has returned with a personal vendetta. We shiver dramatically, we wear puffed coats the size of small yurts, and still complain like we've been wronged by the gods of mild inconvenience. We Google things like how to warm feet faster and can soup cure existential dread. We huddle in cafes like post-apocalyptic survivors, sip overpriced lattes that taste like vanilla disappointment, and stare out the window at the gray sky like it owes us an apology and 3 months of sunshine. But deep down, we are still cave people. Beneath the fleece and touchscreens and Wi-Fi thermostats, the primal programming remains. We still form cuddle piles on couches like it's survival instinct. We still eat too much stew and pretend it's for comfort, not just emotional insulation. We still tell long, dramatic weather stories like, "That one time I walked to school in the snow with wet socks and trauma," as if we alone survived a national disaster. Because winter might be softer now, but our flair for the dramatic, that remains untouched by time. If the cold is everywhere, become a burrito. Wrap yourself in everything that isn't nailed down. If your friend starts singing love songs to a glacier, don't panic. Just give them soup and make sure they don't file for ice marriage. If a squirrel keeps stealing your food, stop fighting it. Accept that he now owns the house, the blanket pile, and possibly your last name. You are the descendant of weird, frostbitten geniuses. People who looked at blizzards, yelled no, and survived anyway. They conquered the most dramatic climate tantrum in human history, armed only with moss boots, emotional resilience, terrible ideas, and wildly inappropriate cuddling strategies. And it worked. So layer up, hug someone, draw a face on your firewood and give it a name. Make a snow ritual that would confuse meteorologists. And when the wind howls, the night falls, and your toes forget they exist, remember, you were built for this. By weirdos, for weirdos. Just don't forget to pack extra moss. Seriously, you'll need it.